Oi, eu sou Cláudio Silva, representante de vendas sênior, e hoje dou as boas-vindas ao nosso episódio especial do The Download, apresentado pela Getty Images, dedicado ao setor de saúde. Antes de começar, algumas informações rápidas. Esse é o nosso primeiro episódio do The Download em português, então eu quero fazer um agradecimento especial a todos os clientes Getty Images que estão aqui conosco. Muito obrigado pela parceria e pela preferência de vocês. Fiquem ligados no botão de Q&A que está aqui embaixo, porque é nele que vocês vão mandar as perguntas que a gente vai responder no final. E também fiquem atentos à caixa de entrada de vocês, porque durante essa semana nós vamos mandar um link com a gravação desse programa que a gente está fazendo aqui hoje. Dito isso, vamos começar o programa então. Vocês sabem que o setor de saúde está atualmente em constante mudança. Os avanços tecnológicos, o foco crescente no bem-estar, a equidade na saúde e o patient advocacy estão remodelando as atitudes, preferências e exigências e expectativas dos consumidores. Para conquistar e manter a confiança, as marcas devem refletir as jornadas atuais de saúde e bem-estar, tanto dentro quanto fora do ambiente clínico. Renata Simões e Semi Malab estão aqui hoje para compartilhar a pesquisa Visual GPS e mostrar mais dados desse estudo.
Thank you, Claudio. As Claudio said, my name is Sammy Malave Jr., and I am a Creative Insights Manager here at Getty Images. I'm specifically doing work for North America, Latin America, and Brazil for the context of this conversation. And specifically, what I'm going to be talking to you all today about is the healthcare industry in Brazil and some new research titled Healthcare for Me, Closing the Authenticity Gap in Brazil, which is really about understanding how to get more personal with visuals in the healthcare industry in Brazil. But before I go into the insights, I think it's very important that we speak about how we arrive at this insights as a creative insights team, specifically, and as a creative team more broadly. And we do so by utilizing our visual GPS methodology. And visual GPS comprises of three very important parts for us. The first is the analysis of the content that brands search for on our platform, as well as the content that they license on our platform. And that gives us really good insight into what brands are interested in and what they're engaging with the most, specifically here today through the context of healthcare. We also look at the consumer perspectives in Brazil and among Brazilian consumers to understand what they think about visuals and what they expect visually from our clients in the healthcare space and from our customers in the healthcare space through a proprietary survey that we launched throughout the year. And then we also contextualize all of that with news trends, with advertising trends, with pop culture trends, with art and design trends to really situate all of these insights with what's happening around the world visually. And for the research that we did in healthcare this year, that meant looking at more than and analyzing more than 250,000 photographs and videos chosen by healthcare brands in Brazil over the last 10 years, looking at over 2,000 search terms on Getty Images and iStock from healthcare brands in Brazil. And then also looking at results and answers from our survey among more than 800 Brazilian consumers. And ultimately, that helps us arrive at the insights you're going to see today, mainly around how we can infuse more warmth into healthcare visuals, as well as how to infuse more personalization. But before we go into the specific insights, I think it's helpful to really talk about the state of the healthcare industry in Brazil today. We know that the healthcare industry in the country has experienced massive change in the last 20 years. Technological innovations have increased access to services and information. The country has been increasingly investing into resources to transform the industry for patients. And all of this is happening as patients are becoming more and more empowered around their healthcare journeys. And this progress comes with obvious visual considerations. But let's start with the state of the healthcare industry in Brazil right now. As progress continues on a number of fronts, we'll talk about today via technology and access, consumers are feeling more and more empowered to take control of their own personal journeys. And this is seen at scale. The future of the Brazilian healthcare industry looks optimistic, considering some crucial variables. Brazil is now the largest healthcare market in Latin America. Nearly 9.5% of its GDP is spent on healthcare, which is the largest in Latin America. And consumers are increasingly willing to pay for better healthcare services and treatment. And alongside that growing market, and likely because consumers are spending more and more on healthcare, comes a more active relationship with the healthcare industry. Preventative care in a post COVID world has become a priority for patients and healthcare providers alike. Exercise, mental health, immunizations, and overall wellness are being considered as part of treatment as folks move away from reactive treatment in an attempt to arrive at a more personalized understanding of individual health. Right? We know from our survey that 56% of Brazilians agree that they take proactive steps to take care of their health and wellness today. And technology in this relationship plays a very important role, right? We know that access to technology has increased over 80% since 2000. And that access, that digital access, is what empowers Brazilians to take more control of their health, right? And so technology and that access is really, really crucial to the relationship with the healthcare industry today because it puts more knowledge in Brazilians' hands. But that access doesn't mean that the role of medical healthcare professionals is any less important, right? 77% of Brazilians today, and this is from our survey, tell us that they tend to trust more healthcare professionals about their health versus the 23% that say they trust their own intuition about their healthcare journeys. So, despite all of this access and all of the knowledge that consumers have and how empowered they are today, the role of medical professionals is no different, is no less important. And aside and including and alongside all of this, alongside all of this, we have Brazilians now starting to expand what they consider health and wellness. We know that 96% of Brazilians agree, and this is from our visual GPS survey as well. 96% of Brazilians agree that it's equally important to take care of themselves emotionally as it is to take care of themselves physically. So that's nearly all Brazilians that we've surveyed feel this way, which has visual implications for the healthcare industry. And these truths, right, between wanting more control of their healthcare journeys while also preferring the guidance of a healthcare provider, point to a desire for a well rounded healthcare approach. One that takes into account how patients have expanded what is considered healthcare, like mental health and wellness, but that also still respects and reveres the role of a healthcare provider. We know now that Brazilians, according to our survey, almost the same amount of Brazilians say that to improve their physical health is more important for their lives now as it is to improve their mental health, right? So, alongside the role of technology, alongside all of this, physical and mental health are equally important. And it's important to take note that as these changes occur, as more and more Brazilians contextualize their healthcare journeys as part of a more holistic experience fueled by more access to technology and personalized knowledge, they expect to see those unique realities reflected back to them from the healthcare industry. Right, 63% of Brazilians agree that brands in the health and wellness space have to show people and experiences just like the ones they're living in order to be trustworthy. So it's important. Authenticity is going to be important moving into this next phase of healthcare in Brazil. And brands seem to understand this desire for more authentic representation, right? When we look at what brands are searching for on our platform, we see that these search terms can be categorized into a variety of important themes. Of course, medical is the most popular, which is no surprise as we look at what healthcare brands are searching for. But that's immediately followed by terms related to things like community or women and technology. This signals that brands too are looking to expand visualizations of a changing healthcare industry. And as researchers, this inspires us to look at the images that brands are kind of engaging with on our platform and how that matches up with where the industry is today. And despite all of this interest, there's still an authenticity gap when it comes to visualizing healthcare. We know that lifestyle visuals, that is visuals of people just living their everyday lives, make up 42% of healthcare brand choices. And that sounds great. But when we dig deeper into those visuals and how they're composed, we see that posed scenarios far outnumber candid ones, right? People, images, videos that are explicitly posed appear in popular healthcare visuals 7 times more than candid ones. So this to us says that there's a huge opportunity for brands to really move away from candid, stoic, really posed imagery around healthcare and infuse it with some life. And I think this is where we go into those insights that I mentioned earlier and those stories around just how exactly to do that. And the first story has to do with a kind of infusing healthcare imagery with humanity. We know that in today's day and age, brands are interested in visualizing this important role and the role of healthcare providers, right? Among the top 100 searches by Brazilian healthcare brands, the top four involve healthcare professionals. Among those search terms is doctor patient meeting, which is specific and worthy of further exploration. And I'll get into that right now. Despite being more proactive than ever before, Brazilians still put the expertise of healthcare workers before family and friends, right? So when we think about how to visualize the changing healthcare landscape, we still have to keep doctors and other professionals top of mind. That role is still very important, and that expertise is extremely valued. And that specific scenario, right, that relationship between doctors and patients is an important one to explore further, especially because when we ask Brazilian consumers what types of visuals resonate the most with them, nearly 60% say that they trust healthcare visuals more when they show these interactions. And I think this picture and this image that we've highlighted here to exemplify this really does it well, right? There's that kind of tender moment between a nurse or a doctor and her patient that feels true and feels like it's just a captured as a moment in time. And I think this part is where us as a team of researchers, it inspires us to see, well, we know that this is important for Brazilian customers. We know that it's important for Brazilian patients. How exactly are brands engaging with the importance of this scenario? And when we look at how brands are visualizing these relationships, what we see leans into the opposite of what folks want. These are visuals pulled from among the most popular visuals chosen by healthcare brands in 2024. And what we see here is really cool lighting and just kind of healthcare visuals that feel a little bit impersonal, right? We still see those interactions, but we don't necessarily see them as being heartfelt or warm in nature. I mean, even the visuals where we see doctors looking directly at the camera, it just doesn't feel as personal as we know consumers want. But I think we start to see something interesting when we look at other areas where we know consumers are interested in. Visuals specifically tailored to scenarios revolving around mental health provide the aesthetic treatment that we see missing from healthcare visuals overall. So these were among the most popular visuals chosen by healthcare brands in 2024. specifically related to mental health. And if we kind of put these side by side with the visuals on the last slide, we see a very clear difference, right? These feel a little bit more warm. They feel a little bit more taken out of a moment in time. And so, with all that information, the question becomes, how then do brands borrow from the warm aesthetic of mental health visuals to alter how doctor patient interactions are shown? Video plays an important role here. Popular healthcare campaigns in Brazil use techniques like framing and employ personal narratives to intentionally center the patient and their experiences. And ads that we've come across that we think are great use that warmth to center patient doctor experiences. But 52% of popular video portraits feature couples or families or friends, right? So when healthcare brands are engaging with these types of visuals, they're leaving out the role of healthcare professionals completely. And this means that there's room for healthcare brands to also include doctors and other mental health professionals and help infuse the healthcare visuals with the warmth that we know is missing. And I'm going to pass it over to Renata to talk a little bit about how to do that when looking at imagery.
Obrigada, Sammy. Então, quando a gente fala de recomendações visuais, tudo que o Sammy mencionou aponta para o foco na humanidade, né, dentro desse contexto de saúde. Então, seja por meio de retratos em movimentos, incluindo os médicos e os pacientes, ou até imagens estáticas que destacam momentos emocionantes e autênticos durante uma consulta médica, o importante é incluir imagens da área de saúde que transmitam essa humanidade, esse acolhimento, e isso permite que as marcas se conectem com os consumidores brasileiros da forma que eles desejam. Essas imagens são ótimos exemplos de uma abordagem acolhedora, empática nessas interações entre médico e paciente. E a linguagem corporal também, as expressões faciais, em alguns casos até mesmo a iluminação, eles ajudam a criar uma sensação de conforto, de familiaridade, também de confiança. Então é importante destacar que muitas dessas imagens ocorrem também fora de um consultório médico, que também reforça essa conexão e esse afeto que os consumidores procuram.
Thanks, Ren. And that brings us to the next story revolving or related to the infusing healthcare visuals with humanity. And this one has to do with food, right? We know that Brazilians and Brazilian government officials in recent years have shifted focus from raising awareness on malnutrition to raising awareness on obesity. And now more than ever before, adopting a healthy and balanced diet is the focus of preventative food related practices. And this focus on nutritious eating, combined with what we already know about how Brazilians feel about holistic health, creates a strong connection between cooking and mental health. And the satisfaction that comes from cooking a meal is more pleasing than simply incorporating more nutritious food into your diet as a Brazilian. And we see this reflected in our visual GPS survey, right? 34% of Brazilians prefer to cook or eat a meal that they've made that's been prepared when dealing with stress or being upset in order to feel better mentally, versus 13% who prefer to incorporate more kind of nutritious elements into their diet, right? So there's something very specific and helpful about the act of cooking a meal more so than what the meal consists of. And so again, as researchers, we love looking at how this data, is infused and how these insights show up in what brands choose, not only today, but over time. And so when we look back at the most popular images that healthcare brands have interacted with, we can see that 10 years ago, or a little bit over 10 years ago in 2014, this visual here was the most popular visual chosen by healthcare brands related to food. And what pops out immediately is that these are all raw ingredients, they're very small portions. It just feels very literal. And when we fast forward to 2024, which was last year, we see that the difference in these visuals is pretty obvious, right? This year, or in 2024, we see that we've zoomed out a little bit. We see more of what's happening around the food and who's cooking it. This evolution speaks to the importance of prioritizing the benefits of cooking nutritious meals rather than emphasizing its raw ingredients. Again, there's more to the picture, and as a result, it sends a stronger message. But we know that there is still room to grow. Um, we know one of the benefits of video specifically is that it expands the visual elements that appear in an asset. And with a video, a simple image of cooking can become a larger, more emotional moment of connection between loved ones over a heartwarming meal. But healthcare brands, by and large, ignore this opportunity for a preference for stills, right? 91% of visuals related to food chosen by healthcare brands are still photographs. Only 9% are videos. And that creates a real big opportunity for healthcare brands to differentiate through food in video. And we know that even food in and of itself is important because cooking and eating are really powerful expressions of love and connection for not only Brazilian culture, but for broader Latin American culture as well. But it's something that we know is unique to this audience specifically, and creates an opportunity to really lean into that, the power of that connection. And now videos regarding around food and the connection are not often chosen, but when they are, these videos tend to use techniques like composition and framing to enhance the emotion and social natures of these food related scenes, right? Less than 1 in 4 videos of food and cooking show kind of these emotional aspects, emotional and social aspects that cooking allows folks. And so I'm going to let Ren again speak to some of the creative details of how to choose that imagery and make sure it aligns with these insights. All yours, Ren.
Obrigada, Sami, mais uma vez. Então, em termos visuais, a sugestão é direcionar o foco dos ingredientes para as refeições e esses momentos que eles proporcionam, destacando o alimento como o ato de cozinhar, como um canal de conexão humana, né? Que, como o Sami comentou, para nós brasileiros, promove esse bem-estar mental e emocional. Muitas dessas imagens mostram pessoas em casa, comendo, cozinhando com seus entes queridos, em momentos que parecem ser íntimos, né, como jantar em família, conversa com amigos, aprendendo a fazer um prato. E outra coisa também a considerar é o tipo de comida que está sendo mostrado. Sempre que possível, é importante mostrar pratos brasileiros com os quais as pessoas estejam familiarizadas para dar essa autenticidade ao momento.
Thank you, Ren. I personally love all of these visuals on this slide. It feels warm. It feels like home, even though I'm not Brazilian. But I think the energy and the warmth translates really well. And this brings us to our second insight about putting the person in personalization. We know that from predictive technologies that tailor care based on individual diagnoses, to progress in health data access and patient rights, to even AI driven research and innovation, Brazil is among the top countries that are on the road to personalized healthcare in Latin America today, signaling that we are right on the edge of innovation. And that's a great place to be. But as people expect personalization, that means brands have to be tuned into the specific medical needs that mean the most to Brazilians right now in order to authentically reflect that back to them through visuals. As it stands, there is an incentive for brands to prioritize this active personalization visually, right? Research out of Pfizer tells us that 30% of Brazilians are drawn to health and wellness ads that tell a personal journey. So there is an incentive to lean into this. And given the importance of tech in the healthcare space right now, our team looked at the role that healthcare tech plays in what brands engage with. And we know that right now it plays a very little role, right? Only 2% of popular healthcare visuals show personalized health tech. And when it is shown, personalized health tech tends to focus on the function of the technology or product, right? The images or the visuals that you see on this slide are all among the most popular chosen by healthcare brands last year. And they all have something in common, which is regardless of the tech, we don't really see much about what's happening or what function the tech serves. We know some from the diabetes specific tech, but we don't really know what else is happening, and that it kind of exists in opposition to personalization. And as all of this continues to progress, as personalization becomes more and more important, specific medical needs arise that have visual implications, especially given that 33% of Brazilians want to see people in healthcare related imagery with similar needs or in a similar situation to them. And I mentioned that earlier in the presentation. But additionally, over 9 in 10 Brazilians seek to develop daily wellness practices and exercise routines. So situating technology in this context can deliver on the personalization that consumers want to see. You know, it's not just about the kind of the watch monitoring your heart rate, but what are you doing that a watch needs to monitor your heart rate, right? Are you doing yoga? Are you out and about? Are you at the gym? Expanding the kind of storytelling around the tech is going to be important. And this exists not only for stills but for video as well, right? We know that video is the preferred format for healthcare visuals. 64% of Brazilians prefer informative videos when we talk about healthcare, and 42% want to see healthcare visuals that feel energetic and that represent and showcase vitality and health, right? So video is an important way to demonstrate the value of that health technology. And again, as a research team, that inspires us to look into, well, how are videos doing this if we know it's so important to consumers? And we know that brands attempt to kind of insert vitality and energy into health tech videos through the act of running, right? More than 50% of videos that showcase health tech chosen by healthcare brands focus on the act of running. And what's missing here are other scenarios where wearable technology is useful. Scenarios like yoga or tennis or even just a long walk with friends. And I'm going to let Ren explain a little bit more about what that can look like in choices.
Então, com tudo isso em mente, existe uma oportunidade de selecionar recursos visuais, especialmente vídeo, que ilustrem os benefícios de diversas atividades físicas. Além da corrida, a gente pode mostrar pessoas praticando yoga, ou jogando tênis, pedalando, ou até mesmo caminhando. Atividades que também são energéticas e também são ativas. E essas cenas, elas podem incorporar a tecnologia do healthcare como parte da narrativa, não como foco principal, mas ampliando esse conceito de movimento, de bem-estar, além da corrida. E existem várias maneiras de se manter ativo além da corrida. E essas imagens, elas mostram como que a tecnologia também pode fazer parte de uma variedade de atividades físicas, desde da natação até o ciclismo, basquete, futebol. E o importante é ampliar a visão sobre o que significa estar ativo, né? E explorar essas diferentes formas de movimento. De volta para você, Sammy.
Thanks, Ren. And our another story around personalization and something that matters to Brazilians right now as it relates to healthcare is that of pregnancy. Right, we know that visuals of pregnant women have become increasingly popular in recent years. Between 2020 and 2024, the amount of visuals revolving around pregnancy doubled in that time, and that outperforms Latin America overall. But we're not necessarily seeing kind of an accurate representation of pregnancy in popular downloads. So the question then becomes, What's stopping brands from following through on this intent? And so when we look at what brands are actually engaging with and what they're downloading, we see, specifically through the lens of pregnancy, that there's a preference to remove pregnant people from the frame, to focus on the belly and the literal aspect of being pregnant, right? 50% of popular visuals chosen by healthcare brands revolving around pregnancy really only focus on the belly. And in the spirit of personalization, there's more brands can do to connect with the individual lives of pregnant people, especially since 95% of Brazilian women would like to develop daily wellness practices, right? Which gives us a direction for how we can steer visuals revolving around pregnancy and match it with what we know Brazilians want out of life. And so, knowing that for Brazilians, this definition of wellness has evolved to include both physical and mental activity, that urges us to consider how important it is to look at pregnancy through that lens. Very few visuals of pregnant people show them living active lives. So, doing things that are not centered around their pregnancy, from facial care routine to preparing a shake to doing yoga. And even further, only 2% show women exercising at all, pregnant women exercising at all. And so there's real big opportunity to expand the role that pregnancy plays in the lives of women, specifically through kind of holistic health. But aside from that, we know that kind of visiting medical facilities is also important. Um, On the last slide, I spoke about how pregnant people are often shown alone, but even when they are shown with people, these visuals still tend to feel lonely and impersonal, right? So only 4% of visuals show pregnant women in a medical office with a family member or friend, right? And these images also leave out same sex couples entirely. So there is a real big opportunity outside of the kind of a medical scenario, but also within the medical scenario, to expand how pregnancy is visualized. And Ren, do you want to take it from here?
Com certeza. Então reconhecer que a experiência de estar grávida, ela não é única, ela não é isolada e nos dá a oportunidade de escolher recursos visuais que abordem a gravidez com respeito, com honestidade, indo além dessa narrativa tradicional. Então não precisa ser só, por exemplo, entre um homem e uma mulher, nem mesmo um casal romântico, mas pode também ser amigos, familiares, pais ou outras crianças até participando de uma consulta médica. E também mostrar o estilo de vida dessas mulheres fora do contexto da gravidez. Então, mostrar pessoas grávidas vivendo uma vida que não é solitária, como, por exemplo, no trabalho, ou praticando esportes, ou em casa com pessoas queridas, né, incluindo diferentes tipos de relacionamentos. Essas escolhas visuais, elas ajudam a ampliar essa percepção sobre a experiência de estar grávida. Sammy?
Thank you, Ren. And I do just want to say one thing here is that one of my favorite images that me and my team found while doing this research is on this slide. And it's the one in the middle of the woman on the beach, who's also pregnant. And I think that is a perfect encapsulation of how we want brands, healthcare brands specifically, to engage with pregnancy in visuals. This woman just so happens to be pregnant, but is clearly doing something that she loves. And it doesn't seem to be kind of the sole focus of the image, but does enhance what she's doing in the image, which I think is exactly where we want brands to go. So I just wanted to call that out because it is my favorite. But thank you, Ren. And so on to the last section of this, last but not least, I think something that we want to talk about is one thing I mentioned earlier, right? That Brazil has moved from raising awareness about malnourishment to now focusing on obesity. And as a result, gordophobia has emerged as the demand for the perfect body remains strong and reinforces unrealistic beauty standards for those with bigger bodies, right? 25% of Brazilians are considered obese now. So this is a very, very important topic throughout the country as it relates to healthcare. And as a result of this pervasiveness, body positive movements have arisen to offset the discriminatory effects of gordophobia, with even doctors emphasizing that conversations about obesity should focus on overall health and not weight or physical appearance. And this is even mirrored by Brazilians themselves, right? Our survey reveals that 87% of Brazilians strongly agree, not just agree, but strongly agree that brands that focus on that healthcare brands that focus on health and wellness and that are kind of messaging towards obesity should focus on kind of overall lifestyle and not necessarily physical appearance. Okay, and so this focus really limits visibility, especially because we know that folks and Brazilians who appear with bigger bodies in visuals chosen by healthcare brands appear 2 times more in scenarios related to kind of medical scenarios than they do in lifestyle scenarios, which to us signals that, at least through healthcare brands, obesity is seen as something to be treated and not something that people just so happen to live with. And I think a good example of that is the video you see on this slide, which is just a man who so happens to have a bigger body doing something as simple as laundry, right? Those are the things that we're not necessarily seeing. And the reason why I mention men specifically is because they're largely left out from the visualizations of folks with bigger bodies. Men only appear in 13% of visuals chosen by healthcare brands that feature people with bigger bodies. And when they are shown, they tend to be shown exercising or dealing with sickness, which to us signals a kind of stereotype around how to combat a living with a bigger body. On the other hand, women appear in 87% of popular visuals chosen by healthcare brands, are afforded a wide range of expression, right? Dealing with bigger bodies, portraits, they're enjoying life. They're not just in the context of a doctor or a medical scenario. And so there's a real big opportunity to really focus on men with bigger bodies and the lives they live with those bodies. And Ren, you want to take it from here?
Obrigada, Sami. Então, em termos de recursos visuais, nós recomendamos mostrar homens com corpos maiores, vivendo vidas plenas, né? E além dessa estética tradicional dos cuidados com a saúde, e destaque o aspecto humano desses cuidados, a conexão, o bem-estar emocional e também a experiência de viver bem. Homens com corpos maiores, eles nem sempre estão tentando perder peso. Então os visuais aqui, eles vão além dessa ideia, eles mostram homens com corpos maiores participando de uma variedade de atividades que colocam eles no centro da cena e celebram essas vidas gratificantes que eles levam. E agora de volta para o Sami para finalizar.
Thank you, Ren, and thank you all for joining us today as we spoke about the healthcare industry in Brazil. We hope you found this informative, and I'll throw it right back to Claudio.
Muito obrigado, Renata e Semi, pela apresentação. Nós vamos para as perguntas ao vivo em breve, mas antes disso, eu quero falar com vocês sobre o Custom Content. Sua marca é única, então por que o seu conteúdo visual também não seria? Com o Custom Content, trazemos à vida a sua visão e a história da sua marca com fotos e vídeos personalizados e exclusivos para você. É simples, traga o seu briefing e nós cuidamos do resto. Seja para produzir conteúdo com seu produto em outros países ou novas imagens de estilo de vida no Brasil, utilizamos o expertise de mais de 550 mil criadores da Getty no mundo todo para entregar materiais que estão alinhados com a sua marca, seu orçamento e o seu prazo. Entre em contato com o seu representante de vendas da Getty Images para saber mais. E continuem aqui conosco que em breve retornaremos com a nossa sessão de perguntas e respostas ao vivo. Bem-vindos de volta para a nossa sessão de perguntas e respostas de hoje. Aqui comigo estão Semi e Renata, que acabaram de fazer essa apresentação incrível do Visual GPS e vão responder as perguntas de vocês. O Semi vai responder as perguntas em inglês, então se vocês quiserem ativar a opção de tradução para ver a legenda em português, tem um botãozinho aí embaixo de CC, Closed Caption. É só clicar nele, deixar a língua falada como inglês e trocar a legenda para português. Então, sempre que ele falar em inglês, vocês vão ver a resposta dele na legenda em português. O espaço está aberto para vocês mandarem perguntas, eles vão responder tudo, mas antes eu quero dar um oi especial para alguns dos nossos clientes que estão aqui presentes hoje. Eu vi que o pessoal da TBWA está aqui presente, o pessoal da Newton, Prevent Senior, muito obrigado pela presença de vocês. Mas agora sim, vamos para as perguntas. Renata, Semi, estão prontos? Ready?
Yep.
Ótimo. Eu vi que já chegaram algumas perguntas aqui, então eu vou na sequência que elas foram chegando. Então, a primeira pergunta que a gente tem aqui é para Renata, que diz o seguinte: quais são os principais elementos a considerar ao criar conteúdo visual para garantir que ele ressoe com os consumidores de hoje?
Clau, eu acho que um ponto importante que a gente mencionou aqui hoje é o contexto em que o consumidor vive. A gente sabe que os brasileiros, atualmente, eles estão ampliando essa definição do que é considerado saúde, né? Então, observar como que essa evolução acontece, o que ela inclui e onde que ela se conecta com as marcas. Isso vai ser fundamental para criar essa conexão que ressoa com o público brasileiro.
Ah, sim. E eu achei interessante também que o Semi, na apresentação, né, ele trouxe o fato de que alguns conteúdos mais pousados e com pessoas olhando para a câmera aparecem 7 vezes mais na comunicação das marcas do que imagens mais espontâneas, né?
Com certeza, e eu acho que essa também é uma oportunidade para as marcas até, se afastarem um pouquinho, né, desses visuais mais pousados e darem um toque mais humanizado, mais quente, né, nesse conteúdo. A gente sabe que as imagens que capturam essa espontaneidade desses momentos especiais entre as pessoas, elas criam uma conexão mais forte com o público. E eu também aproveitaria para acrescentar que o vídeo pode ser também uma ótima maneira de ampliar essa conexão, porque com vídeo a gente consegue oferecer mais tempo, mais espaço para explorar essa interação. Então pode ser algo que mais imersivo também para o público-alvo.
Sim, sem dúvida. Inclusive, pesquisas recentes mostram, né, que mais de 80% hoje do tráfego na internet já é de vídeo. Então, sem
Exatamente.
dúvida, usar vídeo vai trazer mais vantagens aí nessa comunicação e nessa aproximação. A gente tem mais uma pergunta aqui, que agora é uma pergunta para o Semi. Então, como ele vai responder em inglês, eu vou fazer a pergunta primeiro em português e depois eu vou traduzir para ele. A pergunta que a gente tem aqui é: como as marcas de saúde podem usar insights baseados em dados para orientar suas estratégias visuais e se manter à frente das tendências do mercado? So, Sami, this question is for you, so I'll make it in English.
Thank you.
How can healthcare brands use data-driven insights to inform their visual strategies and stay ahead of market trends?
Yeah, thanks for that, Claudio. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. I think that's a great question. And it's the reason why my team is here and why I'm here presenting to you. I think, luckily, my entire team is dedicated to arming healthcare brands generally and in Brazil specifically with the data that they need to inform their visual strategies. And like you all saw today, our creative insights team is constantly researching industries like healthcare, among others, and providing insights on how to keep up with visual trends in the space. And so, visiting the Visual GPS blog and looking at our healthcare vertical, healthcare brands in Brazil can find useful articles, insights, and even visuals to aid them on their journey. So, they have all that they need with us.
Great, thank you. Rê, você quer acrescentar alguma coisa?
Não, acho que é isso mesmo. A gente, como ele comentou, a gente tem uma equipe que cuida também dos colaboradores no Brasil exclusivos. A gente está sempre conversando com eles e brifando eles para criar esse conteúdo que a gente traz aqui para vocês hoje, que a gente recomenda vocês a usarem.
Perfeito. Temos mais uma pergunta, então vão mandando as perguntas de vocês, pessoal, que a gente tem tempo aqui ainda para responder. Então, a terceira pergunta é para Renata também, e ela diz o seguinte: quais são as armadilhas comuns para evitar ao criar visuais que transmitam aparência e sensação de saúde?
Ótima pergunta. Eu diria que uma armadilha que a gente até trouxe aqui hoje é associar a saúde e o bem-estar só com o ambiente de consultório médico. A gente viu que os brasileiros eles têm incluído mais formas de cuidado nessa definição de bem-estar, como o CM abordou a saúde mental, alimentação saudável, tecnologia, então tudo isso faz parte. Então, a gente também ouviu o CM falando que, se eu não me engano, é 60% dos brasileiros que esperam ver essa realidade refletida na comunicação visual das marcas. Então, se a gente limitar essa visualização da saúde só ao ambiente de consultório médico, vai acabar restringindo essas possibilidades visuais e também não captura toda essa diversidade, dos cuidados que fazem parte desse conceito atual de bem-estar.
Sim, e eu adorei também a parte que ele até falou sobre a questão das grávidas, né, de mostrar esse período da gestação também por outras formas, né, não sendo de uma forma tão solitária. Até comentei com um cliente ontem sobre isso, de mostrar esse período também como um momento de interação, né, de estar com os amigos ou com pessoas da família, e não somente o momento mãe e bebê, né. E temos aqui mais uma pergunta. Eu acho que nesse caso aqui, tanto o Semi quanto o Renata podem responder, então fiquem à vontade para sair do mudo aí e falar. Qual dica vocês dão para um colaborador que trabalha e cria seus ensaios sozinho? Como ele pode recriar esse cenário relacionado à saúde em casa, sem ficar preso apenas nos temas de home care? So, Semi, what advice would you give to a contributor who works and creates their shoots alone? How can they recreate this health related setting at home without being limited to just home care themes?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that, Claudio, and for the person who asked that. I think if we kind of go back to the insights I just presented, I think one of the interesting things that we found in researching healthcare in Brazil is how much that definition of healthcare is expanding outside of the context of a health situation like a doctor's office or even home healthcare. So I think that was a really good question. And one tip to explore there is the different aspect of that expanding definition of health beyond traditional home care. So, for example, you can create scenes or concept scenes that represent self care, like moments of medication or preparing a meal or exercising at home or outdoors. Reading, resting, kind of mental health becomes important in this context too. So anything that falls within or under that umbrella is going to be important for visualizing healthcare.
Eu queria acrescentar também que, bom, uma coisa, quando a gente fala de comida saudável, não é só saladinha, alface e tomate. Comida saudável pode ser muita coisa, então pensar nisso também. E também essa parte de tecnologia que o Sami comentou aqui hoje, dos aplicativos de saúde, dos smartwatches, até a telemedicina, né, falando com o seu médico, enfim, por Zoom. Isso também faz parte, são coisas que você pode fazer. E o que a gente sempre fala para os nossos colaboradores, que é pensar na diversidade do seu casting, né, para representar as diferentes faixas etárias, também os diferentes estilos de vida, diferentes situações do dia a dia, né, do cotidiano. E lembrando também do que a gente falou aqui sobre autenticidade, que é super importante, transmitir essas emoções e essas conexões reais, para poder, para ressoar bem com o público-alvo. E aí também aproveitando, já que a gente está falando com pergunta provavelmente de um colaborador, semana que vem a gente vai fazer um webinar específico para os nossos colaboradores, brasileiros do Brasil, falando sobre saúde, como eles podem abordar esse tema nos ensaios deles.
Já aproveitando, já fazendo aí, ó,
Fazendo a
propaganda para o nosso
propaganda.
próximo evento. Não deixem de participar. Se for contribuidor, né, já entra lá nesse outro webinar, que aí vai ser mais específico para os contribuidores também. E nós temos mais uma pergunta. Eu acho que também aqui, tanto o Semi quanto o Renata podem trazer informações importantes. O Ricardo Sato mandou aqui, na questão sobre pessoas de idade mais avançada, houve alguma pesquisa sobre essa faixa etária? So for Semi, regarding older adults, has there been any research on this age group?
There has been, I think, what we presented today really focused generically and wasn't specifically focused on age. But I know throughout, we just did healthcare research for Latin America as a region as a whole. And what we're seeing, even beyond Brazil and for the continent overall, is that when we think about older adults in healthcare, what we're seeing is they are kind of overrepresented and we see them needing a lot of help. And so something we've been working on, especially working on in briefing creators, and this is where Ren and her team have been doing a lot of good work to make sure that we get the content we need, is really expanding how we show older adults in the context of healthcare, of leading healthy lives, leading active lives, and not necessarily relying so much on help or medical help or help from a family member or a younger person to make it through the day. We know that older adults are really being in charge of leading their lives, and that's important to keep on visualizing.
Yeah, for sure. Renata, quer acrescentar alguma
Não,
coisa?
ele falou tudo que eu tinha em mente, o Sammy já falou, justamente isso. A gente tem até uma coleção que se chama Disrupt Aging, que é justamente mostrando eh, eles de uma maneira positiva, curtindo a vida, comendo saudável, fazendo exercício, correndo, fazendo parte de clubes de corrida, tudo isso. Então é exatamente o que o Sammy falou.
Perfeito. Temos agora aqui, na verdade não é uma pergunta, né, mas um comentário que foi enviado aqui, que diz o seguinte: obrigado pelas ideias. Acho que usar um conteúdo mais autêntico é realmente importante. Não tenho certeza por onde começar. Você poderia marcar uma reunião com a minha equipe para nos ajudar com algumas dicas? Eu vou até responder primeiro essa pergunta e dizer, como representante, que sim, podemos marcar uma reunião para falar sobre tendências visuais, sobre o Visual GPS. A nossa equipe de conteúdo, nós temos uma equipe de conteúdo no Brasil que tem criado algumas tags que melhora o acesso de vocês ao conteúdo brasileiro, ao melhor que está sendo produzido no território brasileiro, com modelos brasileiros. Então, a gente pode sim marcar para falar sobre isso. Eu posso mostrar para vocês essas tags, como vocês podem usar também outras palavras-chave para encontrar esse tipo de conteúdo mais autêntico, né, dentro do acervo da Getty. Mas não sei se a Rei ou Sammy, do you want to add anything, Sammy?
No, I think that was it. I feel like Ren and her team are all very proactive in working with creators in the region in order to arm them with the information that they need to create the content that we know is going to sell. So I think Ren and her team are the people to pay attention to in order to know what to capture and how to capture it to make sure it's going to be used by brands and seen out in the world.
E qualquer feedback sobre conteúdo, vocês podem falar com seus representantes de vendas, porque sempre chega para a minha equipe, a gente sempre tenta ao máximo se comunicar com os nossos colaboradores para criar esse conteúdo que está faltando.
Perfeito. Obrigado, Rê. Obrigado, Semi. Eu acho que respondemos as perguntas que tinham chegado aqui. Então, esse foi o nosso programa de hoje. Muito obrigado por enviarem as perguntas de vocês. Essa gravação, né, de hoje, ela vai ser enviada durante a semana para o e-mail de vocês. Então, fiquem tranquilos que vocês vão poder reassistir ou enviar para a equipe de vocês. Muito obrigado, Semi e Renata, também pela presença. Thank you, Semi, for being here, for your expertise, for your research. Renata, obrigado também pelo conhecimento, por trazer a pesquisa de vocês, o conhecimento de vocês, né? E lembrando a vocês que se vocês tiverem qualquer dúvida sobre o Visual GPS ou quiserem acompanhar as tendências visuais, né, saber mais, vocês podem entrar em visualgps.com, visualgps.com, para saber mais e também para assistir outros episódios do The Download, é só entrar na página do nosso programa. Se vocês também tiverem perguntas sobre Premium Access, sobre conteúdo personalizado ou qualquer outra solução da Getty, é só entrar em contato direto com o representante de vendas de vocês na Getty Images, ou vocês podem enviar um e-mail para a gente no thedownload@gettyimages.com. E esse foi o nosso programa de hoje. Muito obrigado mais uma vez pela presença, pelo tempo de vocês. Obrigado, Rei. Obrigado, Semi. E eu sou Cláudio Silva. Nos vemos no próximo The Download.